While your role as a teacher and coach is to provide students personal growth opportunities through athletics, the role of the athletic training community is to give you the tools so you can help your team perform at their best and create the safest possible environment. Hello, I'm John Almquist, a high school athletic trainer and former chairperson of the National Athletic Trainers Association Secondary School Committee. Over the next several minutes, I'll cover the ways proper hydration techniques can aid your teams in the area they care most about, performance, while helping you and your administration achieve one of your primary goals, the safety of the individuals in your care. You and I work with high school students every day, so we know about their invincibility complex. So if you can show that properly hydrating can give them an edge in athletic competition, they may listen more closely. A simple way to explain it is this. No matter what sport you're playing, science proves that properly hydrated athletes perform better. For example, a 2% dehydration or losing as little as 3 pounds of body weight through sweat in a 150-pound athlete, performance will suffer. According to a field study of high school athletes, as many as 70% show up for practice already showing signs of inadequate hydration, so you should advise them to take opportunities to hydrate throughout the day. If they're allowed to carry beverages such as sports drinks and bottled water into class, encourage them to do so. If not, tell them to make frequent stops at the water fountain. While water is needed to maintain performance, sports drinks can provide a number of advantages for athletic participants. First, carbohydrates. In the hours immediately before activity and also between activities, they should take in carbs to fuel their muscles and maintain blood sugar levels. Athletes need 30 to 60 grams of carbohydrate energy per hour during exercise to perform at their peak. Carbs in sports drinks help replace those used during exercise. Electrolytes, especially sodium, help replace what is lost in sweat. This is particularly important for those who are salty sweaters, as sodium encourages continued drinking and sodium depletion can increase the risk of muscle cramps. The right balance of electrolytes is also important to help the absorption of both water and carbs into the body from the gut. And finally, flavor, which encourages drinking. Research has demonstrated that athletes rehydrating with a flavored beverage will typically replenish more fluids than athletes rehydrating with water only. This makes a big difference in maintaining proper hydration. When consumed frequently in small amounts, scientifically formulated sports drinks are absorbed into the bloodstream as quickly as water, delivering energy, electrolytes, and fluids without a sloshy stomach feeling. Simply put, dehydration occurs when a person loses more fluid than he or she takes in. In athletes, fluids are primarily lost through sweat during intense exercise or in hot conditions. For example, a football player can lose more than a gallon of sweat in one practice. Other sources of fluid loss include respiration and urine production. When fluid imbalance occurs, the body is without enough fluids to carry out its normal functions. If lost fluid is not replenished, especially as exercise continues, serious consequences may follow. A dehydrated athlete will demonstrate one or more of the following symptoms: noticeable thirst, muscle cramps, weakness, dry mouth, decreased performance, difficulty paying attention, headache, nausea, fatigue, lightheaded feeling, or dizziness. If some of these symptoms escalate to include disorientation, vomiting, collapse, or altered consciousness, it may be an indication of heat stroke, so immediate medical attention is required. Certain symptoms like muscle cramps, weakness, headache, nausea, and fatigue may also be associated with hyponatremia, a condition that occurs when a person takes in too much fluid, leading to low blood sodium. Hyponatremia can be avoided if your team learns to drink appropriately. While all athletes can become dehydrated, some are at greater risk for heat illness, namely those in high-intensity outdoor sports during hot and humid times of the year. It's important to recognize the relationship between intensity and duration. For example, a paced 30-minute run in the heat, which might not seem intense, may well produce a greater heat load than a series of sprints with allowed recovery time in between. There are 3 general types of heat illness. Heat cramps are painful muscle spasms that can be relieved through gentle stretching, ice, and increased fluid and electrolyte consumption. Sports drinks can help ward off muscle cramping because they encourage hydration and help replenish the sodium lost in sweat. Heat exhaustion can be treated by simply removing the affected person from the hot environment, cooling them as quickly as possible, and providing fluids to counter dehydration. Heat stroke is the least common form of heat illness, but the potential for it to be fatal makes it by far the most serious. Heat stroke is a medical emergency that occurs when the body's cooling system fails. There are a variety of environmental factors that can increase the risk of heat illness. Health conditions, medications, and personal characteristics, especially people with high body mass indexes. Uniform equipment can create a barrier to heat loss and cause core body temperatures to rise quickly. And there is a greater risk of heat illness during the first few days of hot weather practice, before bodies have had time to adapt to the heat. There are measures that can be taken to minimize the likelihood of someone on your team suffering from heat illness. First, avoid dehydration. The safest approach is not to become dehydrated in the first place. You can help your team by training them to monitor their fluid loss and to drink enough to replace what they lose. One way for them to verify their own hydration status is to check the color of their urine. If their urine is dark in color, like apple juice, they may need more fluids. If their urine is light in color, like lemonade, they're probably better hydrated. Teach your team to routinely monitor their fluid loss during activity. The best way to determine fluid status is to have them weigh in and out of practices and games. The goal is to finish an activity weighing about the same as they did at the start. If they lose weight, they should be drinking more during exercise. If they gain weight, they're probably drinking too much. Be mindful of body weight concerns, particularly with your female participants. Keep results private, and stress that you are not urging them to gain or lose weight, but are interested in the fluctuations of body weight which are due to changing fluid balance. Next, adapt to the heat. While many on your team may not be prepared for the heat at the beginning of the practice season, all will benefit from a period of gradual heat adaptation. This physiological process can take anywhere from 10 to 14 days for most of the important changes to occur, and should be built into the first 2 weeks of practice. And if you want to get ahead of the game, advise your team to start exercising outdoors 2 weeks before practice begins. They should start with 15 to 20 minutes of continuous exercise in the heat, and add 5 to 10 minutes each day until they are practicing a normal amount of time. They should maintain a steady sweat rate throughout activity. For safety, they should exercise in pairs or groups, and they should stop if they start feeling bad. Even if you've done everything within your power to protect your team from heat stroke, there are no guarantees. The safety of the team is your responsibility. As a first responder, it is essential to understand the risks involved and create a formal action plan in case someone overheats. Implementing the following steps could help save a life. Remember, in a suspected heat stroke situation, seconds count. So while having someone call 911 is important, immediate cooling is the most important step to reduce the chances of permanent disability. It's also important to have someone designated to call their parents in the event of an emergency. The most effective way to cool an overheated body is with cold water immersion, a process that can cool a person from 108 degrees to 102 degrees in just 15 to 30 minutes. It is recommended that every school should have a small ice-filled pool ready in the event of an emergency. But if that's not practical, at the very least, each school needs to have a cooling plan. Assuming that there is no potential for head or neck injury, strip the player of any heavy equipment. Then place him or her in the pool and immerse their torso, shoulders to hips, in an ice water bath. Do not let their head become submerged, and make sure they are monitored while in the pool. If an ice water bath is not available, move them to a shaded area and cool their torso by covering them in ice bags or ice cold towels from the shoulders to the hips. While they are being cooled, a predetermined member of the staff, who should carry a cell phone on the field at all times, should call 911 and coordinate EMS activities. This means more than just making a phone call. The designated EMS coordinator should be prepared to provide all pertinent information, including school name and address, specific directions to your location at the facility, a preliminary description of the affected person's symptoms, and information about the treatment being administered. Be sure to regularly check them for responsiveness, pulse, and breathing. While all staff should know the EMS point of entry and make sure all barriers are cleared, it's the responsibility of the designated EMS contact from your staff to meet the paramedics at the facility's entrance and direct the scene. Don't forget, you also need to accompany them to the hospital. We've covered the performance benefits of hydration and the basics of dehydration, what it is, how to prevent it, and the ways it can affect your team's health and performance, and what to do in an emergency situation. Remember these simple methods to get the most out of your team. Teach your team that science proves that well-hydrated athletes perform better. Have them check the color of their urine each morning to help them gauge their hydration status. Train your team to hydrate throughout the day according to their individual needs. Have them weigh in and out of practice and record their daily weight loss or gain. Finally, lead by example and create an environment in which teachers and coaches are being vigilant and teammates are on the lookout for signs and symptoms of heat illness. Thank you for making the commitment to keep your team safe and performing at their best.